I got in here to talk to Howard and Kate about subject matter that we had given some thought, important subject matter that we had considered, you know, as journalists who have studied the profession. We had important thoughts, and then Brady retired and we nuked all our plans because I got on the Zoom and Howard was giddy as a guy from Boston, enjoying the way that Patriot fans were just wounded because Tom Brady didn't thank them fast enough by name. Just, he's giddy with delight. I don't think I've seen you laugh quite like that, Howard. You're just laughing at the press release, and then Kate's just marveling in general about what a seismic bomb just went off in the sports world, because I really haven't seen a retirement like this, that felt like this, where people just rush to give a eulogy live that throws flowers at our greatest winner, Howard.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of funny about it. And I apologize to the Meadowlarkers out there who were expecting Meadowlarkers 18, or is it 19? I think it's 19, right? Meadowlarkers 19. It's coming your way, but today we're just going to do a little Brady riff. Yeah, I am laughing because the 617 is in a collective brush fire right now. It's like 9 degrees outside, and everyone's like, how could Tom Brady do this to us? I mean, it is kind of hilarious in a way that the guy plays 20 seasons with the Patriots. He plays 2 seasons in Tampa and is thanking the Buccaneers as though he was drafted by them. And it's all just shade. I mean, like, my initial thought of it was, we have no idea what the actual relationship is right now between the New England Patriots and Tom Brady. It's such cult of personality stuff, but everyone's taking it personally. Right? And so this whole day here, it's going to be like over the next like week or so, are we going to completely deconstruct everything that we thought we knew about our last 20 years?
Howard, one of the things I love about this story, because I just got done thinking about the idea that Tom Brady has proven more to us in the last 2 years than he did in the previous 20, because he now has more championships than the Patriots have championships. And the moving away from Belichick, football was confusing enough to me that I didn't know how much of the credit Belichick deserved or Brady deserved, but it leaves no doubt at the end. So if he's thanking Tampa Bay, it can be shade, but it can also be because, hey, you know what? Thank you. I don't get to end my career on a dreary day in Foxborough with the Titans celebrating a pick 6 because you guys didn't want me anymore after saying with Kraft's family name on it that I could retire my way with you guys, and you ran me out. Like, what? This to me feels like Kobe winning one without Shaq, and that's why he thanked that way.
That's right. Well, I mean, go ahead, Kate.
Obviously, this dude is the most meticulous dude, and it's been glorified for the last decade in sports. I mean, we've joked for years about how he has eliminated nightshades from his diet, and how he has used the lymph node brush to make sure that the circulation in his arm is proper. So we're talking about a guy
won't eat a strawberry, won't eat an avocado, a guy who.
I had one this morning. Is that it for me?
Yeah. No, you got to get off those things. Yeah, so I mean, I think about Tom Brady every time I'm eating eggplant or tomatoes, because the skin is supposedly tough to digest. So this is a guy who clearly is fine-tuned to the granular levels of sport, and he goes into the situation that most athletes are the most prepared for, and they have, whether it's an opening press conference or a retirement press conference, you usually have your ducks in a row about, you're thanking the previous coach. You have gone down a list. For Tom Brady to step into this moment and do what he did, like there's no questioning whether it was on purpose or not.
No, I mean, this is I don't know if it's a heel turn as much as it is. Here's a guy who's probably been looking for separation his whole life, right? As a professional, because what we do in this business to people is we love storylines. We love narrative. And so we love Walsh, Montana. We love Belichick, Brady. We love, Shaq and Kobe and Bird and Magic and Tommy Smith and John Carlos. And what I see here in a lot of ways is Tom Brady finally just severing. Maybe there'll be some reconciliation at some point, but today this has nothing to do with the New England Patriots. This has everything to do with me and my future.
Okay, but Howard, can you walk me through, as someone who really knows Boston, and Howard knows all of the shit that Boston is, all of it.
The hilarious 617.
I mean, you lived in Boston. The idea that Boston would be hurt because he didn't give us enough credit, that he would get to win even that, Howard.
That's when you play in Boston, it's not that different from New York, right? Is that you have to pay homage to this city, right? I mean, it's one of those places. It's not nice and sunny down there where you are, where there's other stuff to do.
Rentals, transplants. We're a different part of the world, built differently. We're the tan mistress that Riley hurt New York. When he left New York, Riley came down for the tan mistress, and this is what's happening to Boston right now. Hurt because, hey, we owned you. At the end of Howard, he takes even their respect. At the end, he wins so much that the Patriots getting hurt is such a great compliment to him.
See, but I always looked at it differently, right? And I always saw it differently because I'm old. You know, we're the same age, Dan. Sorry, we're old, right? And so I'm talking to Whitty about this. He has no idea, and I'm trying to tell him. I'm like, look, when you come from where I came from, right? You're born in 1968. You are not expected to win anything on a National Football League field. Nothing. The entire franchise shifted when when Bill Parcells took over, when Bob Kraft bought the team, but they'd still never won a Super Bowl. They were always expected to get slaughtered. I mean, I was telling Whitty, until the 85 AFC Championship game, the Patriots hadn't won a game in Miami in regular season.
An embarrassment. So, Steve Grogan was the best of what they had because he got them wheezing to a Super Bowl where they got extinguished quickly.
Where they got demolished, right? So if you take Boston from my perspective, unless we're talking about the Boston Celtics, you kind of have expected to lose up until about the turn of the century. You never expected to win. And what Brady did was totally changing the entire franchise. And then all of a sudden, how did you go from just trying not to get slaughtered by the Dolphins or the Steelers or the Raiders to they hate us because they ain't us, right? That's Tom Brady right there. That's completely changing the entire... I cannot think of a franchise off the top of my head that went from yesterday to today like the Patriots. This was a franchise of losers until he got there. So I'm not shading Brady at all, right? I mean, he changed everything. Go ahead, Kate.
Yeah. Well, in some ways, Howard and Dan, this is not unlike a piece of conversation that is a through line to a lot of the Meadowlarkers conversations, which is player empowerment.
Absolutely.
And Tom Brady staking out his claim that he will not be defined by his relationship with the Patriots and that the Patriots do not define his success. And it's almost like, in a weird flipping way, it's like the fact that he's naming the Bucks, he knows he doesn't have to worry about people thinking that the Bucks define him. So he can name check them as much as he wants to. It's like, it's this weird psychology, you know, like for hoopers out there. And a thing that I always used to do when I was playing was like, I was known as a 3-point shooter. So at every opportunity I got, I would try to drive to the hoop just to like redefine myself.
You were just counter-programming.
Yeah. Even though it was almost always a poor decision on my part to pass up the three and drive to the hoop, it was that inherent nature of wanting to define yourself outside of the parameters that people saw you as. And you see that a little bit in Tom Brady now, which is if I'm a Bostonian and I just texted my cousin who's a diehard, Rhode Island. I think that counts, Howard. Does that count, Rhode Island?
It is New England. It is Boston.
He's not mad at Tom Brady, right? He expects that there will be a separate press release or press conference that is completely dedicated to New England. He figures they'll have their shining moment.
Oh my God, you got to be kidding me. Wait a minute. Right? Please let this be the way this goes with Tom Brady at the very end hurting New England because they hurt him. They did hurt him. He wanted to end on his terms there. Go get me some receivers. I'm not done. They chose Belichick.
Let's just be clear about one quick thing, Dan. We did learn something here today. We did learn something, and I want to acknowledge that we learned something. What we learned is that going through Kate Fagan's mind is what I really want to do is direct. That's what it's really, I am a 3-point shooter, but what I really want to do is direct. I want to take it to the house. I want to be something different than what I am.
Always.
I like that. The things you learn.
Yep.
Why are you laughing at Boston today, Howard?
Because he gave that city he gave us something we never had before. I mean, how can any of this, everything Tom Brady did as a member of the New England Patriots has completely rewritten that entire history of that franchise. right? I mean, let's face it, if you're a Boston football fan from a certain generation, okay? If you're from my generation, what you are known for as a Patriots fan was two things, okay? You were known for the fact that your fans got so drunk at a Monday Night Football game that you were banned from Monday Night Football for like 15 years, right? That's the first thing that you are known for as a Patriots against the Dallas Cowboys, right? That's one. Two is that when you finally win, when you finally like get to like to celebrate, you beat the Bengals, you clinch a playoff spot, some dude steals a goalpost and electrocutes himself in the parking lot. With the goalpost, he hits a high tension wire and he gets fried, right? That's what we're known for. And then of course Victor Kaim and the sexual harassment stuff with Lisa Olson. This is a terrible franchise. And then you go in a few years later, Tom Brady shows up, Mo Lewis demolishes Drew Bledsoe, and the entire history of the franchise changes. How can you be mad at this guy?
It's great, Howard, for so many reasons, but not just football Boston. How about all of sports in Boston during that time?
Oh, absolutely.
The Red Sox were losers, the echoing losers, an eternity of echoing losing. Tom Brady comes and takes that city from the Celtics, Howard.
Even the Celtics and the Bruins one. They all won.
No, but Howard, Tom Brady takes that city from the Celtics.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying there. Football would have never. Bob Ryan didn't think he'd live to see the day that Tom Brady took football, took New England, took Boston, took basketball, and made it the second sport in the city, and baseball the third.
Yeah. Well, basketball, no matter how much they won, was always going to be third. But it was third to the Bruins and the Red Sox. The Patriots were never even they never even got to the podium until Bill Parcells got there. All right. I mean, and so it is fascinating to me because it's like, don't you realize how much? I was texting with a friend of mine when the Patriots got beat by Buffalo in the playoffs. And then I sent out a tweet with Brady's face that said, there's still one left. And then one of my friends texted me back and was like, screw him, he left. I'm like, it's Tom Brady. We've forgotten about him already? Nah, he's not one of us anymore. I think he's going to be pretty safe historically. And then also, I think there's something else that we do too. And Kate, you can absolutely speak to this because you know what I'm talking about as well. And that is this idea of ownership, right? I mean, do I have to be defined by the that you threw me in the garbage? Remember, like, people in this town are still mad at Roger Clemens. They told you were in the twilight of your career. They're telling you we're throwing you out the door. So what are you supposed to do? I mean, what is a professional athlete?
That hurts. It hurts. Right. That's so personal, right? We do this stuff because, Kate, Tom is robo quarterback, good soldier, son of a disciplinarian, respects authority, and then gets to 40 years old, sort of, and like scratching his head, and he's like, okay.
I mean, Kate, you're a basketball player. If I tell you can't play anymore, what are you going to say? You're going to say, yeah, you're right. I'm in the twilight of my career. I can't play. You're going to go out and ball out. You're going to go try to find some place to prove that you can play.
Well, and obviously I'm going to take it to the hoop any chance I can get, Howard. Any chance I can get. Exactly. No, but I think that the thing I was thinking about there too, in addition, was like how Tom Brady decides to retire as well.
Yeah,
it is representative of who he is, how we've seen the media progress. It's definitely a chapter out of the Derek Jeter book. I mean, there's so many parallels to that, as well as Tom Brady not having to follow that blueprint of, a polished athlete setting up his press conference with all his bullet points, getting all the cameras in there, and making sure he's doing this quote unquote proper. He is above that and past that.
That's right.
He is to the point where he can just, we're like, so you just retire on Instagram now. I mean, Howard, that's what you said before. And it's like, to me, that is the equivalent, as I was saying, of like, when you're the CEO, if you're in Silicon Valley, like, the rules don't apply to you. How you dress for a meeting, they don't apply to you.
You create the rules as you go along.
You create the rule. And that is what Tom Brady has done and seems to continue to do.
Yeah, I mean, there's that, and then there's the other piece of that too, which is you were talking about how the media has progressed or regressed because we are expecting pageantry. We want pageantry, right? We may make fun of the cliche of pageantry, but we absolutely expected Tom Brady and his wife and his lovely children to all be up there at the podium and all of them do this canned press conference that we're going to ridicule. And instead, he goes out and says, "I think I'll just put something out on IG, and I'll make it like 9 pages, and you'll all have to just follow, right, what I'm gonna do." And that's pretty much, that does speak to, in some ways, the stone tablets that we were talking about last week. It's all different now. They're going to do it the way they want to do it, and we have to react to it.
Yeah, and because Whitty just posted this that okay, this is funny to me as somebody who uses Instagram pretty regularly. Is that Brady puts up an Instagram story sharing Robert Kraft's statement saying, "Thank you at Patriots, Patriot Nation, beyond grateful and love you all." Let me just say, as someone who's on Instagram a lot, there's a big fight when somebody puts up a static post versus putting you in the ephemeral stories, okay? You get a little pissed when you're like, "Oh, I went into the stories? I didn't even get a static post."
So wait, you've got Brady trolling them.
No, this is really interesting, Dan.
Here's what I'll tell you is if it's a static post, I can hit the little arrow button and I can share it in my stories. You can't do that.
Wait a minute. Are you guys alleging a sophisticated campaign in the underbelly of the internet with Brady's machine behind him to just actively make shade in the trolling fashion of the kids?
I once had this explained to me. There are story friends and there are post friends, particularly for birthdays. So if you make a post, as Kate said, a static post for your friend's birthday, that friend means a lot to you. If you just post it in your story, lesser meaning.
Also, Whitty, let me jump off of that, because one thing that is true of the stories is that what he did was he reposted from the Patriots account, which takes less than 7 seconds. You just hit send a story, you type something on top of it, bam, it's alive for 24 hours. A static post is a lot of work.
You guys are alleging that Tom Brady in the shadows is sophisticated. He's playing, he's making art.
He's an evil genius.
He's making art.
Genius, right? Here's the piece of this that once again, I am learning more things because like when I don't use Instagram that much, but when I do, I'll see LeBatard and friends put you in their story. Now I'm offended when I see story. That's it. That's all I get is story.
That's right.
I want static post. I want to matter. Don't I matter? Oh, you just hit send. That's it. And before this moment, I was like, "Oh, hey, man, Dan put me in a story. That's great." Now I know I'm being shaded.
Yeah. Let me tell you that I get a little pissy when I'm like, I'm just in the story. So maybe this is just a little tease of what's to come. And tomorrow will be a dedicated static post.
That's it.
A static post, but we need a static post to the Patriots. Otherwise, the Boston fans should be pissed.
I love the idea of Tom Brady orchestrating. If you're really alleging that we're talking about here is a maestro of marketing and wonder who knows how, my guess is that Tom Brady's going to try to conquer whatever he's doing next with Gotham Chopra or whatever, however he cultivates the rest of his image in the documentaries, owning his own content, making his own story, because, right, we can do 16 parts on him right now if you get total access.
We can do 16 parts on IG on how he has shaded the New England Patriots.
Yeah, I could. But yeah, well, I'm sorry, Dan, to cut you off. This is what it's like. I do think that stories is the most casual, easily accessible, least legwork. It is the perfect side eye to the New England Patriots while being able to point and say, I thanked you.
I thanked you.
I did it.
I did the least amount of effort.
You guys are
so
good.
You're like the guy that it's like the Facebook on it when it's somebody's birthday and you just hit like.
Yes. You don't even comment, and you certainly don't put up your own photo. You don't go through your photo archive. Did Tom Brady go through his photo archive and find his favorite Patriots photos and put up a static post?
I am ashamed. This is what I'm ashamed of. Okay. I know Twitter has changed the journalism game plenty and the bar has been lowered. I think of both of you two as journalists. You guys are both better than decoding the internet for
I'm learning.
the secret language of Brady. You guys are better than this. I think that this is you
But
slumming.
Tom Brady has sent the equivalent of a happy birthday text with a lowercase h and a lowercase b and no punctuation, no exclamation points, no nothing.
I love
Yeah.
it. He is actively bothering. They expect, you're right though, Howard. They do expect a press conference where he comes out with Giselle and bows before them, right? Like this is, this feels like
the fans absolutely do. I wonder what Talk Radio is going to be losing his mind right now about what about us? We made you. No. Actually, it's the other way around. You gave us, right? I mean, that is the thing that is that sort of script flipping that you see in today's world where the athletes are sort of saying, no, I'm really not deferential. I'm the one providing the value here. Let's not forget who's doing who the favor.
I think LeBron taught all these guys that, Howard.
There's no doubt about that. No doubt about that. And I was actually thinking about that when Kate was talking about the owning of content, or you were saying it too, Dan, about the owning of the documentary space. It's all propaganda in its own way, but what they have realized, and all the other artists and entertainers realized it long before the players. The players realized that the live component of their job, having to speak to us, is giving the milk away and not buying the cow. You're giving the milk away for free. And I think Brady and all these guys, Brady, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, that they all have their production companies now, and now Brady as well, and LeBron is the guy obviously with Spring Hill. Is the message is you're buying the cow. We're the cow, right? We're not just. I mean, when was the last time LeBron James appeared on something on a network that wasn't his, on a platform that wasn't his, that wasn't like pre or post game?
Oh, but Howard, keep going with that though, because what Tom Brady is doing right now is birthing the access to him only comes through his properties. He has teamed with a documentarian who's going to be a more artful, I imagine, in Gotham Chopra, of letting you see the parts of his life that he cares for you to see.
It's exactly. There is no doubt, and that there's a. And Derek Jeter started this with Players Tribune. That the goal is to cut us out. That's the game, and in cutting us out, they're essentially. This goes back to what we were talking about in the original. I think the first couple of Meadowlarkers that we did, the privatization of everything. That there is no public. That the public nature of this country expands. Whether you're talking about schools and charters or whether you're talking about an athlete giving an interview, that the private is going to control everything. There is no public space.
Yeah. And one of the things, that we've touched upon in previous ones and talked about offline a lot is just the concept of scaling and our country's, the world's obsession with it. And I think this is one element of that, in that shouldn't it be, or it has previously been acceptable to be an athlete and be great as an athlete and partner with other entities to excel in other avenues of whatever business it is.
Yeah.
And to be able to say, like, I'm the greatest X of all time, or one of the greatest, and therefore I can allow someone who is the greatest writer or the greatest filmmaker or the greatest, all of these things, to be great at that thing. But now that is not the model anymore.
No,
the model is like you always say, Howard, empire building. And what underneath the sun can LeBron James or Tom Brady not own? If they can, they should.
And there's nothing more important to the empire than not having to answer questions. That's what all of this is all about. I'm going to control the questions and the answers.
Don't you guys love the artful symbolism, though, of Tom Brady leaving the cold Foxborough gray that birthed the Patriot way of secrecy and hide a murder in the huddle, and you're not allowed to have your own identity. The identity is team, the identity is region, the identity is coach, that he breaks free to the Florida light, and all that opens up in front of him is the entire world. Wait a minute, you guys own my shit. Now I can own it, and look at me. Yeah. And now I'm going to hit you with all this artist shade at the end because you never let me be this. You guys, I had to go look at LeBron to understand. Wait a minute.
Well, and also, Dan, let's not forget something else that he has been praised for by lots of people except his peers, which is Tom Brady took a lot of pay cuts. You know, let's not forget about Tom Brady, the businessman, when it came to contracts and raising the salary bar and everything else, which is what he could have done. He played under market his whole career to keep that team together. And on the one hand, he got all kinds of praise for it because people love football. Because
not at the end. Not at the end. He doesn't get any. It doesn't buy him anything now, though. I'm not even talking about the end of his career. I'm talking about now.
Well, that's right.
Those discounts buy him nothing today because he hurt Boston's feelings.
Right. And we'll see where it plays out.
Yeah. I think we often, or at least in life, outside of sports, I think we all want that kind of perfect ending, right? And you want things to be poetic and tie up nicely, and they never do. They never do. And this to me is so, when you look at what's happening with Tom Brady, his departure from New England, he seemed like somebody who could have orchestrated that kind of Hollywood ending. He could have had that.
But it would have been fake because that's not how he felt, right?
Right.
I mean, how he felt was, you guys ran me out of town. And I'm not going to forget you running me out of town. You know, that's not clean. That's
can we talk about the humanity in the robot? Because if to the people listening, to be as great as that dude was, to do the discounts, to be a part of the Patriot Way, to be a good soldier, how much does that ending hurt that they say, okay, leave? They say, okay, test free agency. We don't let's just talk about the humanity of that. If you're Tom Brady and you feel, hey, I did have something to do with this too. Can I have some ownership of this? Let's just talk about how much that must hurt the human inside the robot.
So, you know, I'm working on this Ricky Henderson book, right? And one of the favorite things about working on this project was talking to guys, how Ricky played 25 years and he wouldn't retire. He wouldn't retire. He still actually never officially retired. And so he's with the Oakland A's, and I'm talking, this is 98, he's 39 years old. And I remember behind closed doors, you're talking to people, and they're like, he's done. He can't play anymore. He can't get around. You can beat him with a fastball. You can do all these things, right? These are the conversations that were taking place that last year about Tom Brady. He's done. He cannot play anymore. You watch that game against the Titans. He throws the pick six to Logan Ryan. And this is the conversation. We can't let him retire on his terms because he can't play anymore, and he's going to set us back. Just ask Michael Jordan about this with the Bulls. The organization is going to make that call on you, and what are you going to do about it, right? Yeah. And so if you're Brady, absolutely, it's not a robot. It could not be more personal. It couldn't be more human. You think I can't do this anymore. And that competitive spirit got turned around on him. And here's the other piece of this. All the people in New England, or at least a lot of the people in New England who may be upset today, agreed with the Patriots. They thought Brady was done too. And at the end of that playoff game, when Mike Vrabel is out there shaking Bill Belichick's hand, a lot of people were like, it's time to move on. He can't play anymore.
You have to imagine that, like any environment you're in for 20 years, you can't help but absorb the truth of what that environment is telling you. And that environment, you know, by all accounts, is telling Tom Brady he's a cog in the machine. Now, Tom Brady can believe as deeply as that he is the machine, but I think there's something about that I always come back to, is him tossing that Super Bowl trophy across from one boat to the other in what would appear, you know, after the Bucs win, in a kind of release that we haven't seen from Tom Brady before publicly.
Kate, I think this is Kobe winning one without Shaq. I think him winning. I think him winning outside of Tampa freed him. Like, it freed him up. I was the machine.
Exactly.
I was the machine.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think we can say that he believed it before then, but I don't know how you can, after spending 20 years hearing you are a piece of the machine, wanting to test yourself to say that you are the machine, but you can't fully believe that you are the machine 100% until you win that title with the Bucs. And in fact, watching the game the other night where they're coming back down again, and I'm like, this dude sold his soul to the devil. How is this happening again? he has to believe in those moments too. Holy shit, I am the machine.
Oh, I think, honest to God, this is one of the coolest retirements I've ever seen, because Barry Bonds at the end could have been MVP worthy, just gets run out of the league in his last season. But in terms of eternal greatness, when John Elway retired, he was at the end of his career. He was washed. He was much younger than Brady. When Peyton Manning got to the end and won a championship, he gets the win, but
it was the defense that won
that. 9 touchdowns, 17 interceptions this season. Tom Brady gets all of the following, because that Rams game also is as heroically as a loser can lose. He's coming back
with him. Let's not forget that. Like, we all talk about his greatest loss. Let's not forget he ran them down the field when they were trying to go undefeated. Now, the defense didn't hold, but at the end of that, his last throw of that season was a touchdown to Randy Moss to get him to go undefeated, to go 19-0.
It's crazy, Howard, what it is that he did winning, and then to get the bleep you at the end to everybody, where we are now. It didn't take long for the machine to turn on Belichick and immediately wonder with Cam Newton, well, wait a minute, who did do this? Who was the machine? Was it you or was it him?
And that is the thing. Like, at some point, right, you do get tired of being told that. I mean, look at Scottie Pippen, same thing. I mean, all these guys at some point, they do want to stand alone a little bit, don't they? At some point, how can you not try to protect what you've done? Even if you end up looking terrible, like Scottie Pippen looked terrible.
But especially as you get older, though, and you talk. I mean, look, man, I saw the quotes from Tom Brady this week talking about Kobe Bryant. We don't get to live forever. We don't get to play forever. And he was referencing Kobe Bryant. Like, that is a thing that doesn't get learned until you're older. You need the wisdom of getting hurt. And, like, I'm sure that whenever Tom Brady began his career, whatever it was, playing for coaches and the system that makes the authority king, and he, God almighty, discounts at every turn, Howard. He allowed the authority to be king until he realized he was the authority. That comes when you analyze your life outside the huddle, which these guys rarely have the time to do because of how stressful that position is. And though at 38, with kids looking at his life, he's like, well, wait a minute. Maybe I can have real power here.
I was going to say that's also when you have the power to do it, because let's not forget, if you're Tom Brady, there's another piece of this that's been hounding you your whole life. Why am I playing behind Drew Henson? Right? I should have never been the 199th pick in the first place. I know I could play this game. You know, that's the thing, that the most enduring thing that I take from Tom Brady is nobody thought he could play, and he didn't believe him. It's like the James Baldwin line, is that the most corrosive thing about racism is when you start believing what they say about you. He never believed what they said about him, and at some point got a fluke opportunity because Mo Lewis put his entire life into Drew Bledsoe's chest, right? I mean, what is that story? I mean, he doesn't change, but his circumstances change completely around him. You don't forget that.
Yeah.
None of you guys thought I could play.
One thing Tom Brady's story, just as like an umbrella story, always makes me wonder is, do we think that in every iteration of the multiverse, right, that Tom Brady becomes Tom Brady? Or is it true what you're saying, Howard, here about, you know, Drew Bledsoe getting hurt? This is an element of fate that Tom Brady has no control over. I often wonder, how many Tom Bradys have there been in the history of sports who never got that break?
They're all at the end of a bar in America somewhere. They're at the end of a bar right now telling this very story.
But we always look at
politics got me.
But it's an inevitability that Tom Brady becomes Tom Brady. If it's not the injury to Drew Bledsoe, it's something else. Is it? There's always that question for me
Walt
of like,
Coleman and the tuck rule. It's everything.
Go on.
It's all of the things. It's all of the things that happen. I mean, and that is what's so wild about this. You give this guy one tiny opening, and he's going to make the most of it. I mean, because I remember watching that game, and that was a strip fumble season over. I turned the TV off. I was in Provincetown watching that game. Turned the TV off, and I was like, oh, season's over. Went away. Turned the TV back on 10 minutes later. I'm like, why is the game still on? They were deliberating, and suddenly the game was back on.
Howard, he threw one touchdown that entire postseason run, and then the first season ends, or that season ends with him at quarterback over the greatest upset in the history of the sport, the Patriots beating the greatest show on turf. And from there, he only excelled and exceeded.
That's
the
right.
starting point is, I didn't need to do much. I was whatever Garoppolo and Jeff Garcia are arguing about these days. I was the quarterback who was the caretaker, and he wins the championship. And all he does after that is play in whatever it is, 19% of the Super Bowls ever played.
And that's why the guy spent 45% of his career in the Super Bowl. I mean, the thing about this is that, and that's why Boston can't be mad. That's why I'm, as a Bostonian, I don't care. I mean, not just as a journalist, but if you're going to try to pull out and still be a fan, you can't be mad about this. Because the other thing about Boston was that outside of the Celtics, when you finally get there, you're going to play a dynasty, and you're going to get the ever-loving shit beat out of you. If you're the Red Sox, you go to the World Series, and who do you get? You get the Bob Gibson Cardinals. Then you go to the World Series again, and who do you get? You get the 75 Big Red Machine. And if you're the Patriots, you get the 85 Bears. And if you're the Bruins, you get the Gretzky Oilers. And if you're the Patriots, who do you get? You get the greatest show on turf. You get the greatest offensive team any of us have ever seen. I'm sorry, and before that, you go and you get the Reggie White, Brett Favre Packers. So every single time
it is every time you're running against a historic thing.
You're going against one of the. I was like, how come we can't get the Canucks, right? How come you can't? Why can't we get the Cinderella Cincinnati Bengals? You get the greatest of the greatest, and Brady beat them.
And he but he also beats Boston, though, Howard, because
and
it's
then
funny.
at the end he beats.
Well, you take a funny regional pride. I don't know. I know you love the ins and outs of sports fandom and the details, but I don't see you show a lot of regional sports pride. And the idea that you are Boston and you are watching Tom Brady sort of laugh in your face and you can't help but respect it is funny. Like,
yes, but he's not laughing in my face, and the reason why he's not laughing in my face is because I'm a player guy. I'm a player. I root for players way over teams, and most cities, where's that allegiance going to go? That allegiance is going to go to team, and that's never really been me, right? So that's part of the reason. But I know my group of friends who are like ride or die with the Pats. It's like, how could you do this to us? There are some folks who get it, especially of your generation. Like my son's generation, he's not a sports fan. My son's generation, he doesn't know pain. They never lose. He was born in 2004, right? But when you're born earlier, that generation, it's like, yeah, we kind of had a pretty good run.
That's so funny, though, Howard, because no, he's not laughing at you, but you're laughing at the way he's laughing at Boston because he gets the
funny.
Yeah, because he gets the last laugh, though.
Exactly.
I mean, how much winning does this guy have to do at life that in every single way he gets to win? In every way.
Yeah, it's true.
No one gets
funny,
that.
though.
No one gets that in sports. No one. Do you know how cruel we've gotten? Like, no one gets, you know what? Like, we're sitting here doing this 10-part documentary on Michael Jordan that he's crafting to celebrate a Nike commercial, to celebrate how great he was, and showing you a little bit of the asshole he thought he had to be that great. And Tom Brady's here, and you can make the argument right now that Tom Brady is a bigger winner than Michael Jordan. That we just watched the biggest winning that there has been in sports. How? It's impossible that a 6th-round pick, 199th pick in an NFL draft, it's impossible that would be the greatest winner across this ecosystem that you guys know so well.
And I was going to take issue with you on that just for perspective, but I think when you add that last element, I was going to say, look, Bill Russell won 11 championships in 13 years. He's the greatest winner.
And two in college and 2 as a coach.
And don't forget the Olympics. And however, he wasn't a 6th-round pick, right? He's a top pick. And so he was 2nd pick, right? So, you know, when you look at that, when you look at where this guy came from, that's a hell of a story.
It's crazy. It doesn't even make any sense. Like, you could do winners and Mount Rushmore, but it's not that guy that gets to play. You know, I mean, Ben Roethlisberger's pretty good. Ben Roethlisberger looks totally washed at the end in a way we can all see. You don't get to retire at the top of your powers. Like, in what world?
And what's really funny about that too is that if you're just going to throw comparisons out there, you know, there was a time when a lot of people believed that Peyton Manning was a better quarterback than Tom Brady.
I was one of them. I was one of them. And he's boat raced Peyton Manning the way you're looking at it now. Couldn't be more wrong. He's made me look wrong for daring to say, Howard, I'm not kidding, for daring to say 7 years ago, and all I'm doing is simple math here. Well, every quarterback ages at 37. It's happened throughout the history of time. Is that decline? I can't tell when I'm watching this sport totally if I'm seeing decline. Sometimes it happens fast. Dan Marino's done. Boom, it's over. I've seen it, and you're losing 62-7. Is that deep ball accuracy something to watch as the aging of Tom Brady? And he had another Hall of Fame career after I dared to question that. Another Hall of Fame career after I said, could that possibly be aging? That doesn't make any sense that that dude would be able to be fountain of youth worthy, be the greatest old person. I mean, you saw what Michael Jordan looked like at the end, Howard. Like 44? Are you shitting me?
Yeah.
MVP of the league at 44? In what world?
And led the league in passing and then retires, 5,300 yards, right? I mean, there's just a lot there to it. I just find it all sort of enjoyable in a lot of ways because so much of this, and here's the other thing about Brady, Kate, that I find interesting as well, is that here's a guy who, in a lot of ways, even skillfully found a way to dance around the fact that he had a MAGA hat in his locker. Yeah. And it hasn't really paid for that.
And a cheating scandal, like no matter.
Let's not, two of them. You had Deflategate and you had Spygate, right? So it's not like he's completely clean. And then he comes out and he gives, this interview. Oh, I'm a positive person and the whole thing. And he was able to find a way in an incredibly divisive country where everybody's wearing their politics on their sleeve. He even found a way to sort of dance around that, and people don't paint him the same way they paint Aaron Rodgers or Cole Beasley or LeBron or Kaepernick or any of these guys.
Or Michael Jordan. Right?
Or Michael Jordan for being apolitical.
For
being that's a black thing, though. That's the fact that, hey, if you're black and you're in that position, you can't escape. You have to represent. But you're right. I mean, I really thought in some ways that Brady was he became Teflon on that as well. And I don't know what to attribute that to. I don't know how I feel about it, but I thought it was kind of remarkable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in some ways, what we've just seen today with the the release, right? The release on Instagram, not mentioning the Patriots, and then mentioning the Patriots in the stories is some of the most insight into his personality that I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. In a roundabout way to say, well, clearly the insight that I'm gleaning is that the Patriots are still in his head, even as he's defeating them by not name checking them.
But there's so much fuck you in that. Like there's
right.
But you know what that tells you?
But this is a guy who was Teflon because he wasn't doing things like that. He was very, very good focused on the work, letting anything that was coming at him, not responding really in any way, and understanding how the media worked, even before I think some media members clearly understood how this modern media cycle was working. He seemed in tune to that and being able to let things roll past him with enough time that he wasn't going to address it in any direct way besides being as vanilla as possible. And in these last 24 hours, there's an insight into what drives him that I think is a stronger indicator to me than anything I saw over the last 22 years about his mind.
Well, whenever I work on a project, especially a book project, and you're dealing with a subject, the very first question, I always put it in this framework. This is an engine. You're pouring fuel into the engine. What is that fuel made of? What is that coal made of? And with him, you can tell none of y'all thought I was any good. I'm going to show you. I don't know when that began, like at what stage. If you read Seth Wickersham's book, very early, crystallized on draft day, sitting there being, getting ready to be told that your dreams are over, that his father had the speech planned for him.
But Howard, this is the thing, right? People were so surprised when Michael Jordan did that Hall of Fame speech and it was through gritted teeth. It was bared teeth. And like, so how could he be so angry? Do you realize this is art, what we're witnessing right now, that the way that he's baring his teeth is trolling on social media with a giant fuck you. You guys hurt me. You hurt me at the end. thank you, Tampa Bay Bucks, for proving that I was the reason we were winning. Thank you.
I don't even think it's the. I don't even know if it's the reason.
Like, yeah, is it dude art? You know what I mean? Like, if this is art, right? And if this is him articulating his feelings, right? That's what it is. Then this is the most football way of articulating your feelings that you could possibly have.
Well, isn't that what they do, right?
Yeah.
Isn't this how they? How do we express ourselves? But I think that the way that I don't even think it's him proving that he was the guy. I think it is this basic. Some of these guys are sharks, man. You like wonder, how do you do what you do, right? I mean, I always think about that when I was covering the Yankees and, during the Jeter flip game, right? And I remember after the game, we're sitting there talking to Derek, and he's just going through the play. And I remember people being so upset with him because they were angry that he was purposely sort of downplaying one of the great instinctual plays we've ever seen. And I'm realizing they're the doers and we're the thinkers, right? They just do what they do, and we have to sort of try to explain how they do what they do with words and everything else. But you look at Brady, and you can simply tell it's real basic, pure competition.
Oh, but you say that, Howard, and I think it's purposeful, right? That his podcast is Man in the Arena, right? The famous quote about the critic. That that's a very purposeful choice on title. Like, you guys don't play. You don't know.
That's right. Who would you rather be, the person doing it or the person watching the person do it?
I just can't believe that he gets to tell everyone to bleep off at the end and no one's got a rebuttal. No one.
Yeah.
Well,
but it's hard as someone, and probably the three of us fall into this category of, we want to understand the layers and the awareness and the meta impact of sports moments. But to your point, Howard, you're talking to Jeter. When I was talking to Abby Wambach about her famous header against Brazil in 2011, Megan Rapinoe cross. And I'm like, well, in that moment, you must have been thinking about, this will be the earliest exit ever in a Women's World Cup. We have built on the back of the 99ers, and we will have lost a decade plus of fan built, and I'm like, I'm laying out all of these layers of meta awareness. Yeah. And Abby was like, oh, not like, I was 100% focused on the ball coming at me. I didn't realize I was in an arena. I didn't realize that we could lose almost a generation worth of goodwill with fans. I mean, these things do not go through my mind. That's not to say every athlete is like that, but
certainly not A-Rod.
Right. But you do realize that the second you take away a layer of you add a layer of awareness, it can't help but come from your presence in the moment. Like,
that's right.
It's a zero-sum game. You can't be 100% invested if you're wondering about who's watching on TV. That is taking away from something on the field. And Tom Brady is like, this is why I don't, to your point where you're earlier, Dan, you're like, how is it possible that he is what he is? I say that all the time. I'm like, there seemed to have been something supernatural almost about the way that he moved through this sport. Maybe it's because it's unprecedented, that the only rationale I have is like, did he build up karma from previous lives? Like, how is it possible that at every turn he had both the awareness that we're talking about in moments, but the presence that we're talking about in moments?
And sometimes it's really not that different from what other people go through. They just do it on such a massive scale. There are lots of people out there, as we've talked about, sitting at the end of bars right now, whether they're football players or whether they're reporters or whether they're engineers. I never got my shot. Right. There's a reason why I didn't get my shot. I wasn't the one who got tapped on the shoulder. I wasn't the one who was given the opportunity. And I think that's the beauty of the Brady story, is that for all those people out there, okay, man, here's your shot. And look what he did with it, right? All right, you're up. Come on, Hobbs, you're up, right? I mean, this is it. And I think that the remarkable part of the story is just the success. Because it's not clean. Like, there's a lot of Tom Brady losses. You lose to the Giants twice. You get beat in Philadelphia in the Super Bowl. You're supposed to lose to the Seahawks and the Hawks. I'm sorry, the Hawks, the Falcons. You're supposed to lose to both of those teams in the Super Bowl, and you find, and at the end of the day, you're still the one holding the trophy.
He lost. He lost with the greatest football team I've ever seen. He was a loser. The greatest football team I've ever seen lost at the end.
And nobody talks about that team because they lost, and it's still the best team. I mean, I will still say, the best football team I've ever seen is the '85 Bears.
All right, you're allowed to have that wrong opinion, but
it is a wrong opinion.
The greatest team of all time was the team Tom Brady lost with. Guys, thank you. I enjoyed doing this. We will talk next week. We'll do what we were supposed to do this week next week.